these days.
Hello and welcome back to Not Overthinking. Tamor and Mags, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing great.
Yeah, good. Great vibes, good man.
Yeah, Mags and I just had breakfast. For people who don't know Mags, Mags is a friend, an ex-colleague. He used to work at Causal, and now he is a video producer. Is that right?
Yeah, video producer.
Video producer. So he's it's quite nice because we live super close to each other. So we always meet up for like unplanned coffees and breakfasts and things, which I think it's just really good for the mental health to have like a sort of a hyper local walking distance friend. But then we're also like, we work together on work stuff. Like Max produces videos for Causal, and then we're also just friends. So yeah, it's quite multifaceted relationship.
Holistic relationship,
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Oh, just one quick thing, Mags. Your beard is like interfering with the microphone, so I would avoid like doing that with your neck, if you can.
Okay, no ascension.
No beard action. There we go.
Okay, fine.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question that's on everyone's minds, which is, when you say he used to work at Causal, like, who left who here?
Mags left Causal to pursue entrepreneurial endeavors. Right?
That's right, yeah. It's been a while. Yeah, I was at Causal for a year. I was the first salesperson at Causal. It was a great year, kind of pandemic times. And after a year, I went to start my own thing. And currently actually just making like, not just video production, but editing and like all the strategy stuff as well. So yeah, that's the name of the game.
Very good. Nice. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. What are we
Thanks
talking about
for having
today? Do you guys have an idea?
Oh, yeah. So we were just hanging out a few days ago, and we were just having a conversation. And then I thought, wait, let's stop talking and let's save it for the pod. Basically,
I love that.
And after some nudging and pushing, Mags finally agreed to come on the pod. Would you be open to? Yeah, I mean, I guess like you don't really do podcasts and stuff regularly. So okay, so the main topic is, I think it would be interesting. As we're all business owners here, it's sort of just interesting to sort of just dig into like current relationships with work and attitudes towards work and like work-life balance. All this kind of stuff that we kind of talk about on the pod pretty regularly. I think Mags and I were talking about that. But before that, I mean, Mags, I'd be keen to hear like, as a non-podcaster, like, what are your feelings going into like recording a podcast? if you're open to it.
I think I'm always actually a big fan of the podcast, from the early days. Used to listen to a lot of the stuff you guys used to do, and glad you guys are back at it. Yeah, I mean, I think you've picked it up now, right?
Yeah, we've picked it back up.
Picked it
back
up
on the horse.
Okay, so I feel like just putting a microphone in front of the person or camera in front of the person changes just I guess like the vibe, right? So I feel a little bit apprehensive having the microphone strapped to the t-shirt, but otherwise good, otherwise fine. Nice. How do you feel? Second nature at this point.
Yeah, I think I obviously we've been doing this podcast for a while now, and I always forget that actually it is a bit weird the first few times you do something like this. So one of my current projects is that I want to make like a mini documentary about Nani, about our grandma. Just kind of like hear her life story and this kind of stuff. And so yesterday we actually did a filming session for that. So we got a good 1 hour of footage. I think we'll have another couple of sessions. They might be like maybe two hours overall in the end after some editing, or maybe an hour and a half. But yeah, I think she was also a bit like apprehensive about like, I don't know, just like going on camera and stuff like this. And I think I hadn't tried to like get someone to do that in a while, and so I'd forgotten that actually there's kind of this, I think, quite normal, reluctance to do that, and it is actually, it feels kind of uncomfortable at first, and you do have to get used to it. But yeah, it was an interesting reminder for me, I think.
Yeah, hopefully when you get into it, it feels more natural. Ali, you're in Hong Kong at the moment.
I am in Hong Kong at the moment, yeah. We might be moving here, potentially. Me and the wife landed here initially thinking, we'll try it out for a month or 2 or 3, and then move to Malaysia, and then move to Singapore, and then see what we like. But we really liked Hong Kong, and I started feeling the itch to have like a proper house with like a studio where I could like do the work without being interrupted by kind of the digital nomad life. And I came to the conclusion that travel is basically just consumption, and the whole like I'm kind of over the digital nomad dream of being able to sort of work from anywhere and stuff. I just want to have like nice place, film the videos, do the pod, local coffee shop, go to the same coffee shop every day, restaurant, same restaurant every day, you know, that sort of thing. Maybe that's turning 30 or getting married. That's done that to me, but we decided we haven't quite decided. We're probably going to just commit to doing Hong Kong for at least a year and see what happens.
This feels like kind of in contradiction with the Ali way of life, though, not just in terms of settling down, but you haven't even explored Malaysia and Singapore, right? You're basically just like landing and staying in the first place that you've come across. Wouldn't the rational decision be to keep going and try a few more options before you settle down?
I don't know. I feel like, you know, there's the whole explore versus exploit kind of thing. I think at a certain point, you feel like you want to stop exploring and simply exploit. And I think landing in Hong Kong and exploring it for a bit and watching a load of videos about it, that kind of made me realize that, you know, it ticks all the boxes, so why not?
You've landed in Hong Kong and you're ready to exploit.
Exactly.
I love it. I think many people have had that kind of idea. Cool. Okay, so Mags, you're running this video production agency, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think an interesting new bit of lingo that's made its way into the mainstream is this phrase "locked in." Have you heard this phrase "locked in," Ali?
Is that like the hustle bros?
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, I guess since I guess the grind set or like grinding used to be like the way of saying that, but now there's this phrase "locked in." About like, hey, you need to get locked in, and you know, this kind of stuff, which I find like I really love it. I think it kind of really captures.
Mate, this is why I want to move to Hong Kong and just stay here for a year. I just want to get locked in.
Just want to get locked in. Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, I just want the stability to just be able to grind every day.
Yeah. So I think being locked in is kind of like. I'm sure everyone can remember a time when they were just like very sort of motivated to do the task at hand. And you're kind of like, you're kind of just like motivated and working hard, and you're feeling good at the same time because you're motivated to do the thing, etc. So that's what being locked in is about. But I think, Mags, you don't like the idea of being locked in or something. Like,
Okay, yeah.
I guess how do you think about, you know?
I think being locked in is a mirage, basically. I think that there's basically. It's probably the most efficient way to get things done, but I feel like it's not the best way to live. Okay, to me, being locked in basically means having a very one-dimensional attitude towards your life, where all you're really thinking about is, as you said, accomplishing the task at hand, right? And we've had different versions of being locked in. Going monk mode, I think that was like considered quite popular, and you do have to have periods of like working intensively, but I feel like there's this kind of almost, you know, put this idea at the very height of your existence, is the idea of just locking in and getting some stuff accomplished. And yeah, I think if you actually had to write a story about someone who's locked in for a year, it would be an extremely boring story. You're basically just sitting at your laptop doing work and you're trying to make more money, or is it like, what's the kind of end goal here? Or you're trying to grow your business? I don't think that's a very interesting story, and I think that it's actually a bit of a mind virus, because when you're not locked in, you think, oh crap, like I should be locked in, I should be grinding, you know what I mean? So actually, it sucks the joy out of your non-locked in times to aspire to this level of locked in that even if you were locked in, I feel like you wouldn't even enjoy it. At least I wouldn't, obviously I'm projecting here. Yeah, that's my view. So, yeah.
Yeah, so where does this thing come from about, like, you know, you're a business owner, right? Such a funny phrase. You know, as a free agent in some sense, like, you can choose how much you work. There's no boss cracking the whip or whatever. Like, yeah, it might look boring from the outside to just be focused on growing your business. Yeah, it might just look like sitting at your laptop. But like, why do you think it matters what it looks like from the outside? And why would you feel bad if you're like not? Yeah, I guess these days, do you feel bad if you're not working and this kind of stuff?
I kind of have this like difficult there's a tension within me, okay, because I pride myself on my work ethic, okay, and I like to work hard and like to work long hours. But I think what I've learned over time is that actually, oftentimes I am just I'm only really doing it because I want to kind of be grinding. You know what I mean? It's almost like I'm grinding because I should be grinding, not necessarily because it's the best way to work or it's the best kind of long-term way to live. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of cultural pressure, let's say, if you're like running your own business, if you're doing a startup or something, to constantly be grinding. And yeah, at least in my experience, I feel like actually if I work, like say I do a 12-hour day 3 days in a row, right? I actually get super depressed on the fourth day, and I feel like a lot of people in their DNA, we're not designed to sit in front of the laptop. Okay, like I think that you should always be doing things, but even the stuff that we consider to be productivity, things that we consider to be useful kind of parts of our life, it's just reduced down to just like doing like information work. Whereas if I take, for example, like an example, like my wife, like she gets so much different stuff done, and maybe like sitting in front of the computer is like 40% of what she does. And so you might think, oh, like, she's not locked in. She's not being productive, but she does so much other stuff throughout the day, which, if you had to kind of tab it up at the end, you would probably discard if you were kind of following this grind set, monk mode.
Hang on.
Mindset.
Can I request some like definitions here, Mags? What do you guys mean by locked in? Do you mean like, is locked in working 12 hours a day? Is locked in working 3 hours a day doing the most important thing and then going to a yoga class and then doing some journaling and then going out for lunch with friends and then hanging out with the kids? Like, what is locked in? Like, what is this thing that you seem to be railing against?
It's not the second thing. I feel like locked in is not that, right?
Well,
locked in is not making time for your wife or do yoga and stuff. Locked in is just sitting in front of the computer, working late nights and like sweating.
So I think when I say locked in, I mean it as a sort of general orientation towards life that is very, very purposeful. You're not, for example, I think the epitome of not being locked in is mindlessly opening your phone and scrolling on some app, right? That is like as locked out as you could possibly be. And so I think if someone, I think when I think about being locked in, and when I like in my head, I'm like, oh, I need to be locked in. I'm not necessarily thinking I need to be doing causal work on my laptop. I'm thinking, hey, when I'm working, I should be like fully engaged and fully applying myself to that, and I should be working hard. And then when I'm not working, I should be, pursuing other things that I care about, maybe like doing some reading or, some active socializing. But what I should not be doing is just like mindlessly scrolling or something like this, or just like flitting from one task to another, and this kind of stuff. So that's what I mean by locked in, and I find that as like a useful like thing just to tell myself in my head of like, oh, I need to be, I'm not locked in right now, whatever.
But it sounds like the two of you then are speaking about different things.
Yeah. So
Matt is arguing against the 12-hour workday, and you are arguing in favor of having goals and sort of pursuing the thing pursuing intentionality, right?
Yeah.
I think your definition is adapting to your point. I don't think that's what being locked in means, mate.
No, but yeah, so we can.
Okay, let's say example. Okay, let's say that you have a really productive day of work. Okay, and you get what you. And I had this day yesterday where I was editing a video, and I was locked in for like 5 hours, and I managed to get this thing done. And it's 4 o'clock, and then it's like you've actually accomplished what you wanted to do, but the man or the woman who's the person who's locked in would actually say, this is just 4 o'clock. I got to keep pushing. I got to like go until 9 o'clock because it means that I've managed to accomplish this thing by then. I said, actually, I should keep going. And in fact, that is what I thought to myself, right? I was like, oh, I finished at 4. If I was Ali or Taimur, I'd keep going until 10, right? And I could get double the amount of time done that someone who was like not as productive could get. And I think that's it sucks the joy out of everything else that you do.
Yeah.
And you're still doing things, but doesn't count towards your locked in time.
Yeah. So I think let's move away from the phrase locked in, because I do think we're talking about different things. But I think you're hitting on interesting thing that is probably quite relatable for a lot of people, where you kind of feel like you need to be on the hamster wheel, and you're feeling bad when you're not doing that. I mean, it's a bit like being at university, right? Like, there's kind of an infinite amount of work you could be doing. There's always, you could always be reading or revising or something like this. You can never really. It's not like if you have a sort of job where you go into an office and you can clock out at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever, and you can come home and you literally don't have to do something until the next day. So I think it's the hamster wheel feeling that I think a lot of us do feel sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, Ali, for example, like what is your orientation towards this? Like,
I don't think Ali feels the hamster wheel thing, to be honest. Well, I think sometimes you said like, I just feel like I'm a bit of a hamster wheel of just making YouTube videos and like, something like this. But I don't think you feel guilty when you're not working. I think you just like, it's just your default thing that you like to do.
Yeah, I don't really feel the guilt at all. But I'm curious about it because I think this is a very real phenomenon. I think I've heard it described as productivity guilt sometimes, where it sort of feels sort of guilty for not being productive enough. I've sort of finished my most important thing by 4 p.m., but like, someone like Ali Abdaal or Taimur Abdal would be working until 10 p.m. Like, I should be like those chaps and be grinding out an extra 6 hours. Is that sort of guilt, productivity guilt, the sort of thing that you're referring to?
Yeah, I think that when you look at people in your industry, if you look at people like, I mean, even around you, like the cultural milieu always puts these kinds of people who are working really hard on a pedestal, and everything from films to books. It's not just you guys. It's like you would think that anybody who's achieved anything in your industry, in your career, whatever, in your society, is basically working and doing all the stuff, extra things, right? It's like extracurriculars almost after you've done your basic things. And it feels like everybody's telling you that this is the kind of the precondition if you want to be successful at what you do. I think what I feel like is, number one, even the goals like that we're trying to go towards are actually shouldn't apply to most people. And two is that, is this actually what would actually help you get there if that was your goal? Do you know what I mean? Over the long term. And I feel like from what I've seen from Taimur and you, like, it seems like you guys, love sitting in front of the computer, love doing work. I find that stuff really depressing, and I really have to force myself to do it. And it's almost, I've accepted at this point, and maybe some people can resonate with this, where like, it's just not in my DNA. Like, I just don't like doing that stuff, and I can't force myself to do it. And I can't go to a coffee shop and enjoy it more. It's just, I like being outside. I like doing physical.
Okay, here's the question though.
Yeah.
My observation is like it seems to me that the reason you are doing your particular brand of business, your video production agency, is as a means to an end. It is an instrumental tool that gets you money and freedom. But if, let's say, you won the lottery and had 100 million in the bank, this is not the thing that you would choose to do with any amount of time, I suspect. To what extent am I right?
I actually think I feel like this is my jam. Okay, I didn't have any video editing experience. I didn't realize the need for creativity and autonomy when I was working in my normal job at Causal, and I had none. But like, I didn't realize it was missing from life until I started doing this. Okay, and actually, what I realized is I love doing this. I genuinely love it, and I would love to spend more time doing this. But obviously, if I won $1 million, I would probably spend like very little time doing this, and I would do other things. And it wouldn't just be more work.
But the thing is, you do basically. It's not like your work is like you're going to the mines and like doing this thing.
I'd love to be in the mines, mate. I honestly think physical work is like, it's part of, whether you're religious or not. I feel like it's part of the fitra. Like, we need to be doing this stuff. But some of us have evolved beyond that stage where, you prefer maybe sitting in front of a computer or
being business owners
down. Maybe I'm just a caveman or something.
Well, but like, you do enjoy the craft of like the videos. I remember like a few months ago, you were talking about, I think when you were making the YouTube videos, like, because you used to make YouTube videos just for your own channel.
Yeah.
And then that just led to you getting up some inbound leads, and then you just kind of accidentally got clients to do videos with. But you really enjoyed this. You were like loving it, man.
The YouTube stuff.
When you were doing the YouTube for yourself.
Yeah.
And like you, it seemed like you were locked in and working a lot or whatever, but like you were getting a lot of satisfaction out of it.
Yeah, I think honestly, I just don't even think it's about the satisfaction. I think coming back to the earlier point, I think it's you could work until 4 p.m. and it's just I'm happy to do that stuff. What I don't want to do, and I feel like this is kind of so much pressure to keep doing, is working beyond that point, like productivity guilt where you have if you don't continue working, because again, you kind of just think like, if I really want to be successful at this, there's the Dave down the road or something who's also making YouTube videos and also making video production stuff. Like it's almost the competitive pressure almost. You know what I mean? As well as a kind of cultural, glorification of it.
Yeah, I can certainly see that. I think especially in tech, especially in the startup world, there is this lionization of the 12-hour, 18-hour work ethic. I think actually in the creator world and in the sort of indie hacker community and in the sort of lifestyle business world, it's the other way around. It's sort of the
Really?
people that are looked up to are people like Justin Welsh, who talks about being a solopreneur, working 3 hours a day, having no employees, so that he can spend most of his days hanging out with his wife and like doing his hobbies. And that is like the new American dream almost. Hey, be the sort of it's sort of like 4 Hour Workweek 2.0 or even 4 Hour Workweek 1.0. That is the thing that gives you more kudos. Like the fewer employees you have, rather than the more employees you have, the less you work rather than the more you work. I think depending on what circles you're in, I find that when I speak to Silicon Valley type people who live in California, there is this whole thing of like, it's almost assumed that when you have a business, you're going to be raising VC. The questions that people ask you are like, what funding round, which firm invested in you, because apparently that's meaningful, how big your team is, as a way of figuring out like how much social status you have. And the whole culture is built around this thing of working 18-hour days to make it or get it or whatever the phrase is to be locked in. But do you feel like this is, or to what extent do you feel like this is sort of the people that you hang out with versus like a more general trend, if that makes sense?
Okay, I actually think that this whole 4 Hour Workweek stuff, at least on the creator side, and look, I watch a ton of YouTube content for my sins, and I feel like often that's a lie, mate. Like everyone who's, for example, you, right? Like the YouTube stuff might take up a smaller part of your week, but you're actually probably net doing a lot more work over the course of a given week than anybody else, right? And so, there's people who talk about doing a 4 Hour work week and you kind of, you grind to get to the stage where you can just like hire people to do stuff and you outsource them, blah, 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 and you spend more time with your wife. I actually feel like it's like, I don't think that's real, man. I think that everyone who's actually selling this dream themselves is not, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure there's some exceptions, is not actually living that life, number one. Number two, if you go on YouTube, everything that I see about being a creator is like, you got to release 5 videos a week, you got to be grinding, you got to be like really pushing yourself. I don't think that that's what percolates down to the common consciousness, is this idea that like, yeah, it's actually kind of way cooler to be like, it's cooler to obviously to get there, but actually to get there, you have to work really, really hard. And,
sure.
that's, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So so you're certainly the end state. The end state that a lot of people aspire to is the 4 Hour work week. Yeah, if I could design my life however I wanted, I would probably work for a few hours each day doing things that would give me freedom, flexibility, financial freedom, fulfillment, and fun. And then I would spend, I don't know, a couple of hours at the gym, maybe doing some hobbies, maybe a few hours socializing, maybe go out for dinner with friends and hang out with the wife and spend time with the kids and blah, blah, blah. But most people's vision of an ideal life involves some amount of work. And generally, when I've polled people on this question, about 4 hours a day, working on things that you genuinely enjoy seems to be a good amount. Certainly, the path to getting there requires quite a lot of hustle and grind. So I guess my question for you then is that do you feel like the reason you feel the productivity guilt is because you know that it will take hustle and grind to get to that end state, or is there something else going on?
I think that the productivity guilt is coming from the fact that you could always be doing more, like kind of what you said, Tamer said earlier on, and you never know what's enough. And I think that, I also do think that for 99% of people out of 100 who apply all of these principles of grinding, maybe not 99, maybe 80 of them will never get there. And I actually think the reason the 20 get there, or 10 get there, or 5 get there, is not really. I mean, yeah, the grinding and the working I've accepted is important. You gotta work hard. But that's not the reason that I actually don't think anymore. Maybe in my like early 20s or my teenagers, I thought this was like the number one determining factor. I don't think that is what determines success. If I think about myself and like, you know, the business right now, alhamdulillah, is going well, but like it's definitely not just because I'm working hard. It's like there's lots of like lucky things that happened along the way. And it's not just about increasing your surface area for luck, so you put yourself out there and stuff. I feel like the determining factor is not my hard work, and it's being sold as almost like the number one most important thing, and that's where a lot of this productivity guilt comes from. It's the classic American dream. Yeah.
I mean, it is the most important thing that you can control. Like, you can't control your circumstances, you can't control who lands in your DM inbox, you can't control the luck, but you can control your preparation, you can control your ability to respond to the lucky breaks, you can control the number of hours in which you work. And I think that's what people are getting at. Yeah.
Well, okay, no. For example, you know, it sounds like maybe, it sounds like maybe you've had some good things come your way that you don't feel like that you feel like are a bit random or something. But to take like Ali's example, like before you were doing YouTube full time, right? You had your day job as a doctor, and then you'd basically spend all of the rest of your time doing like YouTube stuff, like making your videos and filming, like. You were kind of working around the clock, either as a doctor or on the YouTube stuff. There was no way you could have done the YouTube stuff if you weren't working really hard at it in the like 4 hours a day you got in the evenings, right?
Oh yeah, sure.
Like you did actually need to grind it out.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
My point is that yes,
on ways to make it fun and blah blah blah, but you know, do it from coffee shops, etc., etc. But yeah.
Okay, look, my point is that it's a necessary condition, but it's not the reason that you're successful, I don't think, Ali. And actually beyond that, yes, I accept that you have to it's the stuff that you can control. I think what I'm talking about is the baggage that's created off the back of this, okay? And it's like, honestly, I just think for the majority of people who are grinding really hard to get to like the 1%, let's say, position on YouTube or in business, whatever it might be, you know, it's 1% for a reason. You're not going to get there. And you still have, just in terms of just like the net amount of anxiety, productivity anxiety is created, just not worth the like 1 or 2 people who make it. But actually that is the whole system, right? Like that is exactly how this whole machine continues to work, is that you have a couple of breakthrough people and everyone else keeps streaming for the same thing. And like net, I don't think it's good for majority.
I don't know. I would push back on this a little bit. I would say that it depends on what game you're trying to play. If you're trying to play the game of being a top 1% YouTuber, then yes, I completely agree. If you're trying to play the game of being an actor or an actress, or a elite sports person, or a musician, those are games and industries where there is not much of a correlation between the amount you work and the results that you get. This is something that Scott Galloway has been on the rounds doing podcasts and stuff. Basically, his argument is that the sexier the industry is, the lower the chances of success, and the less correlation there is between hard work and success.
Wait, can I just stop you there? I think there's definitely. Look, I think with these sexy industries where like, you know, everyone, if given the chance, would like the idea of being an actor or being an elite sports person or whatever. Like, you know, if you're a human being, like, you would probably think it would be cool to be one of these things.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the reason there's not much of a correlation between the hard work and the success there is because there's just so many bodies being thrown into the arena, and like I think hard work in these things is just like it's the ticket price. Like you have like the only people who ever make it are people who work extremely hard. Like there's just so many bodies being thrown at it that even if, you know, you can look and say like, oh well, actually only 1 in 1,000 actors actually made it, and 999 people were working hard, and therefore there's no correlation between hard work and like making it as an actor. Yeah, there's no correlation if you in that framing, but like if they didn't do the hard work, they definitely wouldn't have made it. Like it's not about correlations. It's about, hey, the price for entry, if you want to be an elite athlete, is you have to work your ass off. And you also have to have good genetics, and et cetera, et
No,
cetera.
I completely agree. So I agree with the point that obviously hard work is a prerequisite for this stuff. What I'm saying
Yeah.
to Mags's point is that, Mags's assertion was that 80% of people who put in the hard work are not going to, quote, make it. And I would say that just depends on the game that you're playing. Some games have a 80% failure rate. Some games have a 99% failure rate. But the more boring a game is, like let's say you were to start a B2B services agency, for example, doing video production, and you only had modest goals. Like let's say your goal was merely to make £10,000 a month or something. You're not trying to go for $1 million agency. You're not trying to land the biggest clients. You're not trying to work with Causal or Nike or
Or the real
Google.
big leagues.
If you're content with merely having a six-figure business, actually, I think the odds of success in that are way closer to 100% rather than 1%. If you apply yourself and put the hard work with the right strategy, it just depends on the game and the goals, right?
Yeah, it seems like the issue.
Mate, that is my game. I'm not trying to build like a $10 million agency. I've told you this table, right?
Yeah.
Like
And you're winning. You're doing the thing. You're a random dude who
he's
who
feeling
has
bad
zero
about
experience with video editing, and you've done the thing. So you've gotten to your goal, man. You're smashing it. Well played.
Yeah, look, listen. I agree. I'm talking about, you spoke about, gas fumes or whatever, like other people's, like, you absorb. This, when we live in a society like this, we are absorbing this, like, general, just like cultural,
Hustle
just
narrative.
like fumes. Yeah, the hustle narrative, right? And it's at every single level, right? It's like, and I actually would say that sports is considered a very sexy career, acting is considered a very sexy career, and I would say that those are, work actually is, as I said, it's a necessary condition, but it's not sufficient condition to be successful.
Sure.
And actually, if you take, for example, sports, right? Like I used to do a lot of sport at university, and you see what, like there you kind of see in the most physical way with the kind of the constraints of what I'm talking about, for example, because actually rest is one of the most important, every experienced athlete tells us, rest is one of the most important parts of actually you being successful in sport, right? Like to do anything really. Like if you want to be a serious athlete, you've got to keep resting. And I actually kind of suspect the same applies when it comes to, and it's not just about burnout, when you're working. But the thing is that the kind of dominant cultural paradigm would say that, man, if you're resting, if you're not like grinding out an extra couple of hours, or it might just be 30 minutes, man, but it adds up over the course of a year, man, it's compounding gains. If you're not doing that, it just kind of makes you feel like, oh crap, like, I'm kind of not even making the most of my time. So
Wait. At this point, I don't feel these narratives that much. I feel like I felt more of this narrative a few years ago. But like, are you seeing these videos? Are you seeing these like grind set?
No, man, I don't watch that stuff. I'm just observing, right? And I'm also,
I feel like you're feeling it really strongly, because like I get that these narratives are out there, but as of like 5 years ago, there's also been lots of counter narratives out there. I think Ali's point is correct that like there's lots of different like traditions within which you might be, and like in the indie hacker tradition or whatever. I think people don't really valorize hard work. In the startup world, they do, etc., etc. Like I just feel like I don't feel the force of this narrative in the way that you do.
What were you saying, Ali? Sorry.
Yeah, I think it depends on which algorithm you're on. Like,
Mate, think about any Hollywood film that comes out. Okay, any film about sports, if you watch any sport, if you watch any Hollywood films, this is the stuff that's being pumped out on a regular basis. And whether you acknowledge it as part of this work hard prop or whatever or not, I think that it's a big part of the cultural kind of, in the West, the kind of, the cultural environment.
Yeah, I can broadly buy that. I think like the mass media narrative is definitely towards that. But it also goes in waves, right? Like during the pandemic, the first few months of the pandemic, there was a big sort of pro-productivity movement. But then, within a few months, there was a pretty strong anti-productivity movement. Granted, that was not reflected in sort of Hollywood films that were coming out around that time. No one is sort of, Black Widow is not going to be a film about like how she actually chilled out and spent time with her husband, that sort of thing.
Why not? I'd watch it.
I mean, yeah, sure, but around the time, like the New York Times, the New Yorker, there was this book that came out called How to Do Nothing that went mega viral. Oliver Berkman's 4,000 Weeks came out that was encouraging people to do less. When I was writing Feel Good Productivity, just the thought of putting the word productivity in the title, we were a bit nervous about, because we knew that there was this sort of anti-productivity movement kind of thing going on. So yeah, I agree with your point that sure, if we look at mass media, if we look at sports, if we look at music, there is a valorization of work ethic. Sure. And that may well be where your particular brand of productivity guilt is coming from. I would say that for someone who's in that position where they're feeling the productivity guilt, it's useful to, again, control what you can control. You actually can somewhat control the people you follow on Twitter, the content you engage with on Instagram. And there is such a strong movement of people valorizing the exact opposite, valorizing balance and, holistic well-being, and like taking time to do your yoga in the morning and only getting to work at like 11 and making sure you're leaving work whatever, because your job is not to increase shareholder returns for the guy who runs your company, et cetera, et cetera. It just depends on what algorithm is feeding you the counter narrative, I think.
I'm curious to dig into, like, I feel like you feel... Okay, I guess I don't know how much the average person feels this narrative, but like you're clearly feeling it quite strongly. And I wonder, like, how have you been thinking about it? Like, what's your psychology around it? Have you, are you kind of, are you successfully suppressing it, or do you, what's been the journey?
Okay, look, I would actually say, look, I'm coping with it just fine. I think that, manage to get things done. And
I'm fine, okay? I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to turn this into a therapy session, but, okay. Regardless of what books come out and there's new yoga things and whatever, and even if mass media adapts to it and stuff, Tim and I also talk about this. It's the material conditions, okay? It's like we just live in a society where it's just like everything is just. I promised I'd stay out of politics today, but I think it's just the society that we live in. It's just super competitive, and in fact, if you leave the UK and you go to Pakistan, UK, you go to Chechnya, which is where I'm from, and you look at how people's attitudes towards work, people's attitudes towards their community, people's attitudes towards their life are very, very different. And until you kind of spend a prolonged period of time in those places, not just going on holiday for a couple of weeks or something and just saying, oh, wow, everyone's into farming here, everyone's so chilled out, you don't realize it's actually kind of an abnormal environment that we're living in here. And that's actually just kind of what I'm commenting on. Productivity guilt, I feel like I feel it, I try and channel it in different ways, but I feel like the society that we live in, the games that we're kind of all playing, you might think we're all playing a different game, but I feel like most of us are playing the exact same game, which is a status game, it's a material gains way, and it's all kind of adds up to that. It kind of necessitates this, which is what we're talking about, which is why all of these films come out, which is why all of these things, we kind of, we read so much about it, we watch so much about it, it's just maybe just a ineradicable part of society. I'm not sure how much we can do about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I broadly buy that. I do agree that we're all playing some sort of status game, some sort of material type game, and in those games, they're inherently zero-sum competitive games, and so, yeah, I guess the way I think of it is a recognition that game exists, and B, trying to sort of counter psyop myself as much as I can out of that particular game. But I do agree with you that is the milieu that we're, the water that we're swimming in. And one of your earlier points was when is enough enough, or something to that effect. I think that's a key question here as well. This is a question I often ask when I'm hanging out with other business owners. When is enough enough? What's the point of continuing to grow the business? And it's a thing that literally everyone I know also struggles with, because you define your point of enough. You say, hey, I just want a lifestyle business where, if I could make $100,000 doing what I love, that would be nirvana. I can't imagine anything better than that. And then you get to that point and the goalpost shifts and you start hanging out with other business owners and you start sort of dreaming of 7 figures and 8 figures rather than just 6 and all of this stuff. Constant struggle, mate.
That's exactly my point. Yeah, I just think there's never going to be, I can't imagine, even for myself, I set myself very modest goals. Just a couple of million a year. Joking. And then actually, the more you kind of get to that point, you realize, wow, this is really not enough. And you kind of keep going. And yeah, I think that's exactly my point. And by the way, if I can just make one point, I think that if I had $1 million or 5 million or whatever, I definitely wouldn't go back to work. And I think that if you at that point you basically decide yes, I would continue to do 4 hours a day, like you mentioned earlier on. Again, it's an abnormality. if you were plugged into your local community,
Locked in.
If you're locked into not to your work, but to your neighborhood or your community, you would find so much stuff to fill up your day. And I think, honestly, I feel like most people would not choose to be advancing some kind of like revenue goal or like sitting in front of the computer.
Well, I mean, sure, but it depends on your definition of work. Like I would define work as, in that scenario where you have all the money, you still want to be useful to others in some way. Now, that doesn't have to be in ways that directly generate revenue, but it does have to be in ways that are useful to others, because that's what gives us our sense of purpose.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. So I think that living a life of service was something that you can definitely imagine filling up your hours, your days and stuff if you didn't have a job. But I think that, people conflate this idea of like being socially useful with starting a business. Often these things are actually in contradiction. I think that like being socially useful or being of service to your local community, like your neighborhood, like your family, all of that stuff is actually it's not something that would be classified as work, and it shouldn't. But that's what I feel like would be far more rewarding, and I definitely want to spend my time doing that rather than like starting a second or third company or something.
Yeah, I guess. But then also, like, there are people who enjoy for want of a better word, the building of things and putting them on the internet. In my case, one of the things that I would do if I had all the money is I would continue to make YouTube videos. I would also run local Sunday school classes, in the Church of Personal Development, because that would be a fun thing to do. And I would want to teach lectures at the local university, helping people, I don't know, start their first business or build a better life or set goals or whatever. But I'd also want to do stuff on the internet because it's just kind of cool. And if I could, given that I'm into coding and web design and stuff, if the idea came to me for a productivity app, I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, that could be a fun thing to build. In the same way that I might build a model aeroplane and just present it in my own garage or go to the local model aeroplane show. Some people's version of the game that they genuinely enjoy playing is, hey, let me whack together a productivity app and present it on Product Hunt, which is the equivalent of the local roadshow for gardening or for dogs or whatever the local equivalent of that might be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And there is a kind of like impulse to create and like problem solve and stuff. That's also kind of part of, you've got to scratch that itch. I just don't know whether there's that much space for artisanal pursuits in today's day and age. If you, for example, if you want to get on YouTube, let's say you didn't have your platform, right? And you want to start on YouTube, I mean, you've got to be so methodical about it, right? You've got to like have a whole process around it. And it's similar, like if you want to build an app, the only kind of indie apps that you can kind of see doing well at the moment, I don't know, like, you see that gas app or whatever. They had like, 15 engineers or whatever who all like worked at Facebook or something, and they built this thing for kids and it did really, really well. But the point is that that's kind of what it takes almost at this point to build something that reaches people. I think that you wouldn't even find it rewarding to build something that's not used by people, it's used by 20, 30 people. Do you think that's not fair?
No, I think, well, I don't know. I think it's probably fair. Again, I feel like it just depends on what the goals are. If the goals are sufficiently modest, then you can, in fact, have whatever artisanal pursuit you want. Like, there's a guy I know called Ryan Norbauer who sold a company, he's made the money, and now he builds artisanal mechanical keyboards that he sells on his website for $5,000. And he's like such a nerd about mechanical keyboards and has literally invented a new type of capacitive switch in a mechanical keyboard and speaks at mechanical keyboard conferences and stuff. And he just loves that. And so it's like, yeah, he'll send it out to his email list. It'll sell out. His 20 units will sell out immediately, and he'll spend his next 6 months hand soldering the mechanical keyboard in this artisanal way to get them out into the world. He's not trying to be a mass market keyboard and sell it on Amazon, which would require more stuff. But he's content with his lot in life of having a very artisanal mechanical keyboard company, which to me hits that box of like, nice, he's doing a thing that he really enjoys. He's made the money already. He's not trying to hustle for that, the 8-figure valuation. He's just living a good life, selling his mechanical keyboards.
You can't say he's content with his lot in life, as if he's just like, living in poverty somewhere, but is somehow, achieving like
some hippie who sells 5K keyboards.
He's content with his lot in life, where he's financially very successful, and now does mechanical keyboards.
He's not trying to make his mechanical keyboards the next Facebook, which to Mike's point would require a team and require the hustle and stuff. He's like, you know what? I'm just going to do this little thing over here and sell them over here and speak at these conferences over here, and that's a fun thing that I do. That's really cool.
Okay, I think like, I think that sounds very rewarding. I would love to have a business where I sell 5K mechanical keyboards. I think that for most ordinary schmoes, I would consider myself among those ranks. Like, it's just not an attainable goal. And I think that you take, for example, this guy who's selling
Why
the
is it
keyboards.
Why
It's
is
just
it
not,
not?
mate. For example, you think about this guy's mechanical keyboard business. I'm sure he spent a long time building his like email list and like getting the distribution out and doing these conferences and stuff before he was able to launch a product that is able to do successfully. No one's going to just like buy a 5K keyboard from some random guy right on the internet. It's like a lot of work that's actually put into doing something like that. It's not just making a keyboard.
I don't understand what your objection is.
No, I'm saying that these examples are basically so few and far in between. And even if we take these examples at face value, I think it obscures the actual amount of effort that goes into getting to the stage that this guy is at. Is that controversial?
I think building anything artisanal, it's like, yeah, for the average Joe Schmo, including me, building, I don't know, an artisanal statue carving business, or even just learning how to carve statues is unattainable because it's really hard. There's like thousands and thousands of hours of skill that goes into the ability to carve statues and the studying of anatomy. And whoever, Michelangelo spent ages like grave robbing the graves in Paris in the Parisian sewers so that he could understand anatomy, so that he could like make David look really. Of course, all of that takes work. It just depends on the goal, right? Like,
What do you hate, Mags? I don't know what. I'm not sure what your. You clearly have a bone to pick with something, with the system or something.
Yeah, I think it's. I think that.
Are you
Also,
trying to
just like
discourage
the
people
beard
from
for a
trying to
moment,
do
please.
stuff?
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, I think. No, look, I think that when we tell these stories about the guy who's like, you know, we reference like the mechanical keyboard guy, or we reference, you know, Michelangelo, whatever, Leonardo da Vinci, whatever. Like, I think that they're just very simple narratives. It's just like, yeah, this guy is really passionate about
Max,
mechanical. Hold on a second. What? That was it. Okay.
Okay.
You make it seem like it's just a pursuit of passion, and it's just not. Like, there's just, you know, there's a lot of like. Yeah, I think basically, I mean, I don't think it's just like simple, just like pursuing your passion to be successful at that business.
Okay. All right, Max.
That's it.
You okay? Let's run. Let me give you this hypothetical. You are running, like, the media. Okay.
Yes.
You decide what the narratives are. You decide. You produce. You are deciding the 5 big blockbuster films that year. You're deciding the stories that go on the BBC front page and all the rest of it. Okay. Like, what is your narrative around work that would make you happy with the system or the narrative? Like, what do you think is an acceptable, narrative here? Because you clearly think that all the current narratives are. It's unacceptable to talk about Michelangelo because that's too simplistic and not. It's unacceptable to tell someone to work hard. It's like,
Look, it's not unacceptable. But as a historian, you have to look at the actual facts. Okay, you have to look at the nuance in it, and you have to look about what is this argument being used in service for. And I think this kind of the argument is used in the service of saying that, like, if you just pursue your passions, you can get a bit of everything, right? Like, you can make YouTube videos, you can make mechanical keyboards.
okay,
you can
but
make
what's
piano
your
stuff.
narrative? What's your
That's
narrative?
okay.
Also,
What's
that's
your
not
narrative?
it. That just to issue a correction on that point. It's not that if you just pursue your passions, you can have it all. It's like if you pursue your passions, you will end up doing things that are your passions. The market rate applied to those passions and how much money you're going to make from them is completely a separate thing. Like, no one is stopping anyone. No one is stopping anyone from becoming an artisanal statue maker. The market is stopping people from being a financially successful artisanal statue maker, which then requires you to do the things that make money, right?
But do you think that you have the time to be making statues if you are working like 9 to 5 or whatever in a management consultancy? Like, do you think that people who like basically do normal jobs and who can't make the market doesn't value their passions to the extent that they would reward them and give them a sustainable lifestyle, give them a lot? Like, do you think that's sustainable?
I mean, of course, it's true that if you have a 9 to 5 job and your dream is to become a statue maker, okay. If you have a 9 to 5 job and your dream is to become a statue maker, then that is not a direct path that you can just get at immediately overnight. No one's going to hand that to you on a platter. The way you would do that, for example, is that you'd be like, all right, cool. The market does not value statue making, but I love statue making. Therefore, I need to find a way I need to figure out an economic engine that supports me so that I can do statue making on the side. Great. All right, cool. What are the different ways of making money in a way that, doesn't take up enormous amounts of your time? Well, you could make more money as a management consultant. You could do the FIRE thing. You could shove it into the S&P, 4% withdrawal rate. You could start your own video production agency, get it to the point where you could hire someone to operate the thing, and now you spend your free time doing statues. It just depends on what you want, man. Like, Whatever you want is on the other side of like a few strategies and actually putting in the work. And
So someone else does all the work that you've been doing. If
Oh my god! Just
Okay,
say it.
let me
Just-
round off the point.
Just say
Let me
the
round
box.
off.
Just say the boxes.
Yeah,
bit,
okay,
all
I'm
right?
going to get to this, okay. You asked me earlier on what media would I be making if I was in charge, the Director General of the BBC or whatever. This is the thing, the media reflects like the society, right? So you can't just go out there and start pumping out yoga, like whatever hippie nonsense about like, you've got to work less hard or whatever. But I think that, you know, to answer your question earlier on, like, if you have a system of equality where it's not just the outliers that are basically just like substituting all of their hard labor, like all of these kind of gains they've accrued, and getting someone else to take over the business so they can like hoard all the leisure time in the society. That is a sustainable way for society to live, and that's net good for everybody. Maybe it's less good for people like, you know, Ali, who's like, you know, obviously put on all the work and stuff. But you know, net society benefits from that equality.
So
okay?
what you're
And we stop working so hard as well.
What I'm hearing is we need the state to distribute all of the resources perfectly equally.
No. I mean, there's a whole can of worms. I don't think I have time to go into that. But look, I think in general, a society where people are more equal than unequal is good for everybody, okay?
Okay.
And it doesn't rely on these like hacks or whatever, strategies or whatever, where the market prices some of the work that you do at a higher rate and stuff, that we can then basically get to a point that we just like shove it off to someone else to run the business for me. Like, that's not actually the model for society. That's an individualistic model that works. It doesn't work for society.
We need a communal model, a communist model.
A communizing system. No, I'm joking. Yeah, look, that was it.
All right, I have to go now.
Yeah, I got it.
But this, we'll have to do a part 2 where you
We'll
flesh
do
out
a
your
part two, yeah.
communizing manifesto that we call it.
That's all I got.
all right, thank you everyone for listening, and we will catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.